Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. My name is Amy Davies, and I'm a Biosecurity Advisor at Livetec Systems. And I'm delighted to have the opportunity today to share some of our thoughts on tackling biosecurity challenges on farm. At Livetec, biosecurity isn't just a priority, it's our passion, and we really do live and breathe it. And we firmly believe it's the key to controlling disease on farm. And to simply put it, if you don't let disease in, you don't have to control it. And for us, getting it right means everyone on farm, knowingly or unknowingly, practices biosecurity in everything they do, and it should be as natural as breathing. Sadly, ongoing disease outbreaks across all livestock sectors show that as an industry, we're not always getting biosecurity right. And Livetec has grown because biosecurity has failed, specifically with culling for avian influenza, salmonella, blackhead, and many more diseases. And we've learned a lot about practical on-farm biosecurity and have adapted our business to use this knowledge to help farmers and enterprises improve their biosecurity and to keep disease out. And while we've mainly focused on poultry, we're now working closely with the pig sector. And you'll notice that much of what we discussed today applies across all livestock sectors. The basic principles are the same, it's just how they're prioritised and implemented that differs. And in our experience with notifiable diseases, they've taught us many valuable lessons, and we've come to understand that biosecurity is a universal concept, and often simple changes to everyday behaviours can have a big impact. And you can see that this is a subject that we care deeply about. So I'm going to start with a big, bold question for us to think about. And it's this: if we all make biosecurity a priority every day, would we still need to cull? And being at the sharp end of poultry culling operations, we know firsthand the devastating impact that a cull can have on a business, let alone the wider industry. And I know that this impact is no less for other livestock businesses impacted by disease like TB, blue tongue, and classical swine fever. And none of these diseases have vanished, and unfortunately, new ones always seem to be looming. African swine fever, for instance, is close to our shores and could easily be with us soon. So today I'll focus on a disease that's currently causing major disruption in our poultry, meat and egg sectors, which is avian influenza. So take a look at the moving image as it illustrates rapid spread of disease. Up until 2020, avian influenza outbreaks in UK commercial poultry flocks were sporadic, but during the winter of 21 to 22, everything changed. And suddenly, over a 12-month period, up until September 22, we had 150 cases. This was then followed by an unprecedented turn of events by another 172 outbreaks between 22 and 23, totaling to around 208 cases for the year ending September 23. Then things seemed to quieten down, and in the first 6 months of the next season, 2023 to 2024 season, we had just 6 cases. So big size of relief all round, and bird flu then seemed to kind of slip down of our list of concerns. But fast forward to now, and it's back, and it's been hitting us hard. So what are we noticing, and are there any similarities to the last outbreak? Well, yes, there are. When we look at the data, we are noticing a repeating pattern, and it's almost identical to the outbreaks that we saw 2 years ago. It's the same areas, same types of birds being infected, and even the same farms. So could we have predicted this, and have levels of biosecurity actually improved as a result? Well, the government did not predict the latest outbreak, and all the data and analysis in the early autumn led the government to conclude that there was a low risk. But what about something we can control? So on-farm biosecurity. And what we learned from that video was that there was a sharp increase in cases following a period of calm where no immediate threat seemed apparent. And during quieter times, it's easy for complacency to set in, and we might feel less urgency and lower our guard, which means taking our foot off the gas when it comes to maintaining biosecurity levels on farm. And we call this biosecurity fatigue. So when environmental disease pressure increases and then we lose focus on biosecurity, that's where diseases can spread easily. And we believe this is what is happening now. All of our birds are housed. They have no direct contact with infected wild birds, yet disease is still getting into our sealed buildings. So just something to think about there. Biosecurity is about creating a culture of preparedness all year round, and we call this Biosecurity 365. So it's 365 days of the year. It's not just during a high risk season. It should be part of your routine every day. And looking at biosecurity in practice, it can seem awfully complicated. So you can see on the slide here all of the different pathways that need to be biosecure on a typical laying farm. And I know it can look overwhelming, but in essence, on-farm biosecurity can be broken down into two things. So firstly, it's your structural elements. So that's your gates, your barriers, your boot dips, and the conditions of your buildings. And those procedural elements. So that is how your personnel, your staff, vehicles and animals are interacting or using these structures that are in place. And in our experience, it's normally the procedural elements that are first to break down. And we believe that biosecurity is much about mindset or behaviour change as it is about physical structures. So some examples of letting things slip might include things like forgetting to clean and disinfect our boots outside the poultry shed when it's lashing down with rain and we just want to get inside. It's continuing to buy our dairy replacements from the same markets and vendors where we know that they are in a high risk TB area, or buying our store lambs from areas where we know blue tongue has been identified. And these examples may resonate for some of you, but the key to remember is we always have the option to reduce our risk. And the best way to combat biosecurity fatigue is to keep procedures simple. And if biosecurity, the measures that you're implementing, are the easiest ways of doing things, they are more likely to be followed. And more often than not, a fresh perspective from a second pair of eyes highlights the obvious, turning what seemed like an overwhelming problem into a relatively easy fix. And this may require thought, and sometimes we might need to pause and rethink how some elements can be modified to improve biosecurity. So you can see on the screen here, there are pictures of a double and single barrier system that we use on entry into a live bird area. And this is a good example of design with many elements that make biosecurity easy. So, for example, a bench barrier, we can sit down, so we can swing our feet over to change our boots without our socked feet touching the floor. And this also avoids contamination on our hands when changing your boots normally. We'll use colour-coded boots to ensure that they're being worn in the correct areas of the farm. You can see there that we might hang overalls far away enough so you cannot grab them from the other side of the barrier. And these are good examples, but simple examples of making things easy to use, but also hard for people to circumvent. And for those cattle and sheep farmers in the audience, these barriers might be overkill and impractical, but the principle of trying to physically exclude pathogens from the livestock building is relevant. And instead, you might use quarantine facilities for new stock coming onto your farm to help avoid them walking fresh disease into your existing herd or flock. So the same principle, just a different method. So what is Livetec doing to help livestock farmers become more biosecure? Well, historically, we've worked in a traditional advisory way, providing a face-to-face service for our customers to deliver bespoke biosecurity advice, training, and documentation. We still do this, but this approach hasn't allowed us to reach the number of businesses that would really benefit from our experience and knowledge. So about 2 years ago, we asked ourselves, how can we do the same work to make change happen at scale? And the answer was simply digitally. So we are using the digital age to spread our knowledge. And through our app, we can now be in your pocket, making it easy to access valuable information and guidance. So through a series of in-depth questions, our guided biosecurity assessment system can evaluate current levels of farm biosecurity and provide recommendations for improvement based on answers that the user has put in. The questioning is about how both biosecurity is managed through human behaviour and the physical structures on the farm. And this is a significant point of difference from other biosecurity assessment tools. Structures can be all singing and all dancing, but if your staff ignore them or bypass them, they just simply won't work. And on the screen, you can see a biosecurity score. So this score reflects what is happening and the risks that might exist on the farm. And it highlights that vulnerability and that weakness. So you'll see on screen, you're 54% biosecure. Fantastic, great. But actually what this highlights is that you're 46% vulnerable to disease. So what this allows you to do is delve deeper into seeing where that vulnerability is on the farm. So is that vulnerability close to my birds? Is that vulnerability at the farm gate? Do I need to look at how my staff are using farm structures and protocols? So it allows you to delve deep into that assessment, see what improvements you may need to make in certain areas of the farm, as this tool allows you to see your farms in different zones. So you can make those biosecurity decisions in different areas. And we would not expect scores of 100%. The scoring system reflects real life, where obvious issues that could cause a breach in biosecurity are penalised heavily. The same as getting a disease, it's going to cost one way or another. And let's use an analogy, and I'm sure most of you have seen the disinfectant advert that claims that their product will kill 99.9% of germs. What they don't mention is that it's probably the remaining 0.1% that will cause the real harm. And this is why we feel it's really important to highlight the vulnerability to manage the risk. So what happens when we don't take biosecurity seriously? And as we are more than aware, the financial costs of contracting a notifiable disease can be devastating. And compensation paid for healthy birds may cover the extra costs that business will incur during the clean and disinfection phase, but it's unlikely to make a dent in all of the other costs that are associated with the significant business interruption. Insurance can help, but in the last 2 years, this has become expensive for many. And additionally, and we believe equally important, is the mental health and well-being of farmers, staff, and other people that are linked to the business. We currently know that some of those farmers have been hit twice by avian influenza and now actively looking to restock with other non-avian influenza susceptible species. However, it's not all doom and gloom. There are farms that we are working with and who are implementing and maintaining strong biosecurity practices, adopting the right mindset. are successfully keeping avian influenza out, despite being surrounded or being next to an infected or cold farm. And this really does show that we can keep disease out. So, in conclusion, I'd like to emphasise that implementing biosecurity is crucial, and it doesn't have to be costly. It just requires a shift in mindset and a consistent approach. And to finish with one piece of advice, it's make sure your biosecurity systems are simple and easy to use. And we believe that if we all make biosecurity a priority every day and integrate it into everything we do without thinking. The question that we posed at the start of this was, would we still need to cull? And we can answer that with a resounding no. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you so much for listening.